Hi, welcome or welcome back. My name is Felicia. I'm a knitter, crocheter, and overall fiber enthusiast living in Washington, D.C. And this is my little corner of the internet where I share my fibery, crafty endeavors, mostly knitting. In fact, today, only knitting. So I just want to thank you for taking time to watch my channel and watch this video. And I'm really excited to share I think some beautiful projects with you all today. So I won't say that this video won't be long. I will say I don't have that much to share, and we'll see where we go from there. We'll see what happens from there. I have two finished objects and a swatch that will be a whip pretty soon. It will probably be a finished object by the next time you see it, but it's a swatch that I want to share. And then I'm going to talk maybe about some knitting plans. I don't know, we'll see. So yeah, so first of all, as I say at the beginning of every single one of my videos, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy lives to come and listen to me talk about knitting. I really do love to share my knitting and talk about knitting, and I'm so happy for this little fiber community that I've I won't say created, but that I've stumbled into. And there are so many of you who leave so many kind and beautiful comments. I really do try to reply to them all. It does get a little busy and hectic, so sometimes I'm delayed in responding to them, but that's just because I work and I do other things, and so sometimes it's difficult to reply to comments as soon as I see them, but I do see all of the comments. I do read all of them. Thank you so much for leaving them, and I will do my very best to reply to them, or at least give it a heart to let you know that I've seen your comment. So again, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos. I am not wearing anything knit today because I'm trying to will spring into DC. We keep getting these little like glimpses of spring, and then it will go back to winter. So I don't know what's going on with the weather. Yesterday it was like 39 degrees when I went to the grocery store. So I don't know what's going on with the weather, and I prefer like fall and spring to winter and summer. And so I'm not pleased. I'm really mad at the weather that I'm not really getting the spring that I deserve, because now it's going to be in like the 80s next week. So we completely skipped like 72 degrees and went straight for winter. I mean, for summer. So I'm a little disappointed in that, but you know, what are you going to do about it? Here I am. And so I'm going to get started by showing you some finished objects. I'm going to start small and then go big, and then I'm going to talk about my swatch / new cast on. Okay, so I finished a pair of socks. These are just some vanilla socks. These are knit in Lola Bean Yarn Co. in I think this is the Plummeting Upwards colorway. And it's got these really beautiful colorful speckles, mostly reds, yellows, grays, oranges, those kinds of colors on. It's kind of a purpley grayish base, and they are stunning. They're so soft. I have been working on finding my perfect sock formula, and unfortunately this is not it. It's really close, and I think I'm going to cast on another pair of socks probably once I get a few other things kind of more squared away with some upcoming projects. But so these socks have a couple of issues. So I think I've talked about this before, but I knit my socks on 9-inch circular needles. I use the Chiaogu 9-inch circulars, and I knit my socks in tandem. So I will cast on both socks, and then I will knit the rib for both socks, and then the leg, and then, you know, and so I switch back and forth between the two. And what I have found is that usually helps me to achieve two socks that are the exact same size, or as close to the same size as possible. For some reason, one of these socks is smaller than the other, even though I knit them in tandem. So you can kind of see it here. If I line up the heel of both of these socks, this one is a little shorter and a little more narrow. Now, on the foot, you can't really tell. So I don't know what that says, but they're not the same size. And I've never had that happen to me before. I'm not like an avid sock knitter. I probably knit 2 pairs a year. Yeah, about 2 pairs a year. But for whatever reason, my socks are not the same size. It doesn't matter. They wear fine. They're super soft. So I don't really care. But that's not my issue with these socks. So the last pair of socks that I knit, I think I showed them on here. They are too big. And I think that my issue is that the first few pairs of socks that I knit them out of Patton's Croy sock yarn. And I don't believe that that sock yarn is superwash. It is machine washable, but they don't label it as superwash, so I don't really know. Either way, that yarn doesn't really grow very much. It doesn't stretch a whole lot. So like the size that you knit your sock is pretty much the size that it's going to be. Well, we know that superwash yarn grows. So once I like washed and blocked these, they are just like a little bit too big. And the cuff, ironically enough, is a little bit too small. So for my last sock, I think I knit those on a US 1. And then I knit these on a US size 0. So I think what I'm going to do for my next pair of socks is I'm going to knit the rib on a larger needle, maybe a US 1 or a US 2. And I'm going to do, I think I did 64 stitches. I'm going to do 64 stitches for the cuff on a US 1 or a US 2. And then I'm going to go down to a US 0 for the actual sock and the heel turn and all of that. Something else that I'm going to do, and I did it on this one, but I think I'm going to do, let me tell you what I did. So I actually decreased extra stitches along the gusset. So the cuff and the leg are 64, the foot is 60. So I think that I'm going to do that again. I like the way that it fits on the bottom part of my foot. I may even go down to 58. I have relatively small feet for my size. I don't have like the smallest feet, but my feet are pretty narrow. So I think that I'm going to do that. And then I think the length of these are really perfect, at least of the shorter one. I mean, it's not much of a difference. So I'm going to try that. The thing about socks for me is I don't really knit them to wear in my shoes. I just like them to be like really cozy and comfy, but I do want them to sort of have that like tighter fit. So I think that's what I'm going to do on the next pair of socks. I have taken some notes so that I remember to do those things because I think it will probably be summer before I'm able to cast on another pair of socks. But these are my vanilla socks and I love them. I love the color. I love the little pop of yellow in the heel. I decided to just do it in the heel because it's a lot of color. And I'm finding that I don't know that I love like a contrasting heel and cuff. I feel like I like it when I see other people's socks, and then when other people do like a contrasting heel, I'm touching all the wrong parts, heel, toe, and cuff. I really like the way that that looks. And then when it's time for me to knit it, I like never do it. So I don't know what that says, but maybe I'll do that on the next pair of socks. But these are those. And then I have something really exciting to show. So on the last episode, I talked about, or I've been talking about it actually all year, and maybe a little while longer than that I wanted to knit the Magnolia Bloom by Camilla Bad. And it's a really popular pattern. I'll show you what it looks like. There we go. It's a really popular pattern. I think there's a cardigan with the yoke detail at the top. There's a cardigan with the lace detail at the bottom. There's like all sorts of versions of this pattern. And I had ordered some yarn from Treehouse Knits from the Cocoa collection in the colorway, well, several colorways, because I bought a ton of that yarn because it was so beautiful. But when I showed it, I showed the Alabrije colorway, and I said that that was what I wanted to knit my Magnolia Bloom out of. And then on the last episode, I said, well, I'm not going to cast it on because I don't want to knit with Mohair when it's hot. And then DC was like, girl, it's not getting hot. You're not getting spring. So you might as well cast on a sweater. And so I had finished my Fox Thoughts pullover. I was working on my test knit, which I'm still not able to show, but I have been working on pretty diligently. I was working on my test knit. I had finished my socks. I'm still working on my half and half triangles wrap. It's right here. It's kind of balled up in a mess. But this now has become not cumbersome to knit with, but it's mainly like travel knitting or sitting around talking to friends or on a Zoom knitting. And I don't know, it just didn't feel like a project that I was going to finish anytime soon. And so I wanted something to finish. And I had the yarn just like sitting out on my coffee table. And one night, it was literally at like 9 o'clock at night, I said, I'm going to cast it on. I'm going to cast on a sweater. I don't care, I'm casting it on. So I did. And here it is. Actually, I'm wearing the same color, so you might not be able to see it. So this is my Magnolia Bloom sweater by Camilla Bad in Treehouse Knits in the Alabrije colorway. So you can kind of see what this color looks like on me because I'm wearing it. I didn't think about that. But here it is. I learned a lot of things knitting this sweater. So let's get into it. So first I knit the size medium, which I think is the second or third size in the pattern. Yeah, it's the third size in the pattern. This pattern goes up to a 3XL. It goes up to 142 centimeters. I'm very American, so I don't know how many inches that is. I think it could go up more sizes. I also think that if you just knit it on a slightly looser gauge, you could get more give out of the pattern. But so I knit the size medium, which is supposed to have 113 centimeters. And I think when I did some Google calculator, because I didn't do mental math. Y'all don't want me to do mental math. I think I have a 110 centimeter bust. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I have a 41-inch bust. So this was just a little bit bigger than my bust size. So I have so much to say about this pattern. And I'm trying to think where to start. Okay, so first of all, I did not have enough yarn for this pattern. So let's start there. I had 4 skeins of fingering weight yarn and 4 skeins of Surrey alpaca. And this is how much of the fingering weight I have left. This is it. I'm sorry, that was probably really creepy in your ear. This is what I have left of the yarn, and you can kind of get a sense of the color and the depth of the color. And then I had Surrey alpaca. I did not take into account that alpaca has less yardage than fingering weight, and it has less yardage than mohair. So I did not think about that until I had split for sleeves maybe. And then that's when it got kind of scary. So I did not swatch at all for this sweater. Because like I said, I was just like in a frenzy and I don't know. I just like wanted to cast this on. So I didn't swatch. I just literally just cast it on. I used the recommended needle sizes and kind of just like prayed for the best. I was like, if it's got a little bit of negative ease, that should be fine. This is superwash yarn. It'll stretch. It'll grow when it blocks. That was kind of my logic. Now, I've never knit a garment out of superwash yarn. So I can't even like attest to the attributes of superwash in a garment, but I know how it behaves in socks. So I was just kind of going off of that. Sorry, I'm looking down. I'm trying to fix the bobbles, and I will talk to you about that in a minute. So I cast on and just went with it. And I realized that I was going to run out of, sorry, my neighbors are making a lot of noise. I realized that I was going to run out of the suri and I wasn't going to have enough to finish the whole garment. So what I ended up doing is I knit the body. Well, I knit the yoke, and then I came back and I knit the sleeves, and I stopped at the ribbing. And then I did the other sleeve and I stopped at the ribbing, and then I knit the body until I ran out of the suri. And that took me like 2 days. This sweater pretty much knit up in 2 days of knitting, maybe 3. And then I saw that Lauren of Treehouse Knits had some extra skeins from her Treehouse, from her Cocoa collection. Words today, y'all. It's early. Okay, so I realized that she had some extra skeins for sale from the Cocoa collection. And she actually had listed on there a skein of the Suri alpaca. I saw it on her story, and I like messaged her like, hey, do you happen to have some Suri alpaca in the Alabrije colorway? And she was like, I did, but I sold it. And I was like, shoot. Well, I used a different word, but my mom watches this podcast. Hey, Ma. And I try not to curse in front of her. So I said, shoot. And so I put the sweater in timeout. And then like the next day, I just went on the website and I was like, well, let me see what else is out there. And I found one lone skein of silk mohair. So I ordered it immediately. It was like, pay now, send it to me right now. I want it. And it took a couple of weeks to get here. So during that time, my sweater just kind of sat. Then when it got delivered, what I did is I knit the cuffs and the hem with the mohair. And you cannot even tell. Hold on, let me. You can't tell a difference in it at all. And I think that's partially because Lauren is a genius with her dyeing and like completely knocked it out of the park with dyeing these colors. But also I think, and I could be wrong, so somebody please correct me. I'm sorry, I keep like seeing bobbles to fix. Anyway, I think that because Suri and mohair kind of, they have very similar properties. I know that Suri is a little bit more dull than silk, than mohair, but I think that because they have similar like fluffiness properties, it just kind of like melts together. And that's what happened for me. And I'm so glad that it did, because this sweater turned out beautifully. It's kind of heavy. Not gonna lie, it's kind of heavy. So I will not be wearing this until winter, which could be next week, because the way the weather is acting in DC, who knows. But yeah, so now I'm gonna talk about the pattern, because we talked about the yarn chicken saga, and I will not be doing that again. The sweater fits great. I think when it blocks out, even if it grows, an inch or two, it'll still fit great. It fits with pretty close to negative ease across my bust. Here, I can try it on. I can show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is what it looks like on. So it fits with, pretty close to negative ease. And so I think even if it blocks out like, an inch, even if it blocks out like an inch or two during blocking, it's gonna fit perfect. And it's slightly cropped, but not super cropped. I don't like my sweaters super long anyway. So it's the perfect length, and I think it's the perfect size blocked or unblocked, but I'm excited to see how the lace and all of that is gonna open up once it's blocked. Okay, now I'm gonna take this off, because it's cold in DC, but it's not cold enough to be in a mohair sweater. Okay, so now let's talk about the pattern. So as I said before, I knit the size small. The pattern does call for 2 strands of fingering and 2 strands of mohair held double. And what I really enjoyed about the pattern is that it is completely charted, which is really nice. It was my first time doing a lace chart. So I really enjoyed that process of like getting to learn the chart and how to read a chart. And it's charted for each size. So there's a chart for the extra small, the medium, the large, and so on and so forth. So I really did enjoy that because it made it a lot easier to follow the chart. I think sometimes when charts, I've done a couple of charted projects now, and when there are like extra stitches and like all this other stuff, I think it can be a little bit confusing, especially if it's your first time. So I really did enjoy that it's charted for each size. And the instructions are very, very simple. Like the pattern is 2 pages. Yeah, the pattern is 2 pages, and then you have your chart. So you're not having to flip back and forth between a lot of things. You like cast on, you do the neck, and it does call for a folded over collar. I did not follow the directions in the pattern for the folded over collars. So what I did is what I always do for folded over collars. I did a provisional cast on to a spare needle. I will have that video linked below, the one that I used for that. I did a provisional cast on to a spare needle. I knit the collar the length that it called for, folded it over, and then I knit off of the provisional needle onto the needle that I was knitting on, and it makes for, I'll show you on the inside, this like seamless, this is really bad. It makes for like a really seamless join, but what I find that it does is it makes for a really stretchy join. And I have a large head, and so I need like things to be stretchy. And so I've never done the one where you like cast on and pick up stitches or any of those other ones. I worry that that would be too rigid. And there might be like, maybe like a structural reason to do it that way, but I find that my sweaters that I have done this way work just fine. So that's what I will continue to do because I just like the way that it looks and I like the way that it fits, and you don't get like any weird puckering or anything like that from trying to like knit it together. So I did the folded over collar because that's what's called for in the pattern, and then you immediately go into this lace chart. It's lace and bobbles, and you can't really see it right here because it's not blocked out, but it's lace and bobbles. One of the things that people kept telling me when I mentioned that I wanted to knit this project is that the bobbles like disappear, and that is true. They are also kind of difficult to knit. I don't know, they just like hurt my hands, and they weren't super fun to knit. But I watched a video of Taylor from Fiber for the People, and she did a really great tutorial on this sweater on how to make the bobbles stand out. So I will link to her video below, but it was really simple. And so I went through and I made all the bobbles kind of stand out. Now, what I will say is, and maybe this will, it will get better like a little bit over time. They do still kind of like pop back in. You gotta kind of go in and fix it, but it's no big deal. So I did the bobbles, and then after you finish the chart, there's a couple of short rows, and then you split for sleeve. I think that's right. And then you split for sleeves, and then you just knit and stockinette. So I knit this on the recommended needle size, which I think was a 10.75. A 7mm. I don't know where I got. It's a US 10.75 or a 7mm. And it flew off the needles. My last sweater was fingering weight. It was on size like 3mm needles. My current project, my test knit, is on 3.75mm needles. So I have been knitting very small needle projects. So this just felt like magic. Like it just like flew off the needles. And like I said, if I had not have run out of yarn, I would have finished this sweater in a week. Like literally would have just finished it in a week, with a majority of the time being spent on the yoke, which I think took a day. And then the rest just kind of flew off the needles. And then for my bind off, I did a tubular bind off on the sleeves and on the hem, because that's my favorite bind off to do. And so that's my Magnolia Bloom, and I love it. I'm happy to have something that when it turns cold, I'll already have a sweater finished, and then I don't have to like worry about knitting sweaters over the summer. Probably will be knitting a lot of shawls and tanks over the summer, but when I finish the 2 sweaters that are about, well, one sweater I cannot show you yet is my secret test knit. So when that is off the needles, and then my other sweater project is off the needles, I think I'm going to switch to like tees and tanks and shawls, because they're just more portable. They're easier to work on, and they won't be like as cumbersome in the lap to deal with. But anyway, Magnolia Bloom. Oh, I had it folded so pretty. Nope. Okay. Magnolia Bloom. And I'm really excited and happy to have this. So I'm going to block this tonight. I didn't want to block it because I was worried about, before I filmed, because I was worried about how long it would take to dry. So now it can take forever to dry. I don't care. Okay. So my next project. So one of my goals this year has been to play with texture and color a lot more. And so I have been trying to choose projects that will teach me skills that I'm really interested in. And I talked about this in my knitting goals video earlier this year. I'll link it for anyone who hasn't watched it, if you want to see that. Anyway, so I have talked about like wanting to learn brioche. And so I was talking, let me backtrack. I've been talking about wanting to learn brioche. I've been saying this for a while. I really, really want to learn brioche. I think it's so beautiful. I think when I watch people knit it, it looks so rhythmic and like soothing and calming. And I knit continental, and so I think that it's even more rhythmic and continental than English style knitting. And so I have just like always wanted to knit it. And I have at least 4 projects that I want to do that are brioche. So I want to learn brioche. And last year, 2 years ago, I knit a brioche hat. And it didn't turn out that great. I think it was the yarn. I'm trying to blame everybody but me. It was a combination of the yarn, and I did not fully understand brioche very well, and I messed up and I tried to fix it and it was bad. And anyway, so I have been seeing people talk about the Knit Collage make along. It's a make along this year because there's also crochet. And the Corinne Cardi, which is like granny square cardigan, had been getting like a ton of attention, as it should. I think it's a gorgeous pattern. I think granny squares are like having a resurgence, and they're cool again, especially with like really modern color palettes. I think they look really, really great. And I've seen some really cool versions of the Corinne Cardi that I may want to do it. But there was this other pattern called the Grow With Me Cardi that is a brioche short-sleeved cardigan. Let me make sure this doesn't have anything on it. Yeah. So that's what that looks like. And I had been talking to my fiber friend Macy of Little Miss Knits about wanting to do the Knit Collage knit along, and she was like, yes, you should do it. It's so much fun. It's so great. And I had thought about doing it in previous years, but I thought that it was kind of expensive, which it is. And I wasn't really sure that I wanted to do it. So when I saw the Grow With Me Cardi, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it this year. I really, really like that pattern. And I think that it's going to be, I I just had a complete brain freeze. I think it's going to be easy to learn brioche on such big needles with such big chunky yarn. So I went online and I was between two different colorway kits, like sort of pre-made kits. I didn't think to do a custom kit. I don't think I realized that that was a thing until other people were talking about their custom kits. So if I do another knit collage knit along, I may do a custom kit or see how to do that. But anyway, I was between two different kits. And so I went out on a limb. I think for me, there was like this very neutral cream one that I really, really liked. And then there was one that had like a powdery blue. And then there was one with purple. There were actually two with purple, but I went with the lavender dust. Oops. Lavender dust. And then it came paired with the sienna redwood. So this is the wildflower yarn, which is like a, how do they describe it? It's like strips of fabric. It's like their fabric yarn. And this is, it's got like a floral print on it. And then this is their Spun Cloud base, which is 100% merino. And lurex. So it's got like silver, there you go. Silver lurex, and it's got like a thick and thin quality to it. So I ordered that and it came really, really quickly. Actually, I think I got my kit in like 2 or 3 days. When I got my kit, I did not love it. Okay, so the yarn looks much more pink than I anticipated. And I am not a pink person. I like neon pink, but like millennial pink, baby pink, those colors are not my vibe. And I was a little disappointed, so I just like let the yarn sit there for a while. And then I joined the like cast on party Zoom, and I was in a small group and we were showing off our yarn and everybody was like, it's so pretty, it's so pretty. And I said, okay, let me wind it into a ball, because I know that yarn in the ball versus yarn in the hank versus yarn knit up can all look like vastly, vastly different. So I wound it up and it looked a little bit more purple. And so I was like, okay, this is promising. And then I cast on and did my swatch. Let me see if I can show this. Okay, this is still attached to the yarn. This is my swatch. I'm trying to get it not to blow out. So this is my swatch. And it looks much more purple now. It's like a soft purple, and then you can see it better on this side. It's like a soft purple and then the redwood sienna. So I like it a lot more. And I think once I have a full garment out of it, I'm going to love it even more. I worked my swatch on my Licca needles. I think that's how you pronounce them. Yeah, I'm painfully American, so I do my best. But these are the Licca driftwood needles in the indigo. They're blue. I saw them on sale on Amazon. I'll link these ones below if you're interested, but I got a really good deal on mine. I got an interchangeable set for under $100, so I grabbed them. Anyway, I thought that they were the actual driftwood ones. I don't mind the indigo ones, but I wanted the pretty wood ones, but here we are. So I've knit up the swatch for this Cardi, and I like it a lot more. I think it's going to be pretty, but now I wish I would have gone for like more vibrant colors. What's done is done. I have the pattern. If I want to make it again, I can do that. If I absolutely don't love it, I'll, gift it to somebody, maybe even to my mom. So mom, if you like the colors, let me know. You can call me or text me or comment below and tell me if you like it. So maybe I'll give it to my mom, or maybe I'll keep it. I don't know. We'll see. Now, one thing that I should have anticipated with this spun cloud yarn and didn't, is that it is thick and thin. And I have a little bit of perfectionism in me. And so I don't love, like, okay, this column, the stitches are pretty even, but then this column, the stitches are like all different sizes. And it's a result of the yarn just being like thick and thin. But I think it kind of makes it look like my tension is wonky. So I'm gonna have to get over that because there's not really a whole lot I can do about that. So maybe this project will teach me that like my knitting doesn't have to be perfect, even though I do strive for like a level of perfectionism in my knitting to my own detriment sometimes. So I'm actually gonna cast that on probably next week. Maybe tonight, I don't know. I'm gonna cast this on soon. The knit along is 8 weeks, I think, and I don't think it's gonna take me 8 weeks to knit this. I think it'll probably take me a week at most. It's short sleeve. There is some shaping, but it's not an incredibly complicated pattern to knit up. So I'm not really worried about it taking a super long time to knit. So I might cast this on next week and see how far I get with it. And I think some time away from the swatch and some time away from looking at the colors will help me to gauge how I truly feel about this colorway. I don't love it. And I've talked about this before about like loving your knitting. And I am a firm believer that if you don't love it while you're working on it, you're not gonna love it when it's done. And it like the way that you feel about a project, like when you first cast it off, is probably the strongest you're gonna feel about it, right? So with my Magnolia Bloom, I love this pattern. I loved knitting it, which doesn't matter as much to me, but I love the finished object. I love the way it fits. I love the way it feels. I love the color. I love everything about this pattern. And I knew that almost from the moment that I cast on. I knew it from the moment that I like wound up the yarn that I was gonna love this project. And I'm having such trepidation about this yarn. And it's not the yarn itself. I think the yarn feels so great. It's so fun to knit with like this thick and thin. Even though I don't love the way the stitches always come out, I love knitting with the, what is it called? The wildflower yarn. I love knitting with that. It's so fun to just have something different on your needles. I loved the brioche. I think I cracked brioche and I can read my brioche knitting, which I could not do before when I did the last project. I can read my brioche knitting. Even though knitting brioche flat is a little bit more complicated than brioche in the round, because brioche in the round, you knit with one color, you purl with another color, and that's the repetition. With this one, you have to knit with the color, slide it back, purl with the color, slide it back, purl, slide back, knit. And but there is still like this rhythm to it. And once you can read your brioche, you're like golden, right? So I can like read my brioche, which I could not do before. And so I'm enjoying that process. I'm enjoying that part of it. But I want to love this cardigan when I'm done. Like, it wasn't cheap to buy this yarn. It wasn't cheap to like, you know, do this. And so I want to love it. And maybe that love will come, maybe it won't, but I'm just nervous that I'm not going to love this project when it's done because of the color combination. And that's it. So, yeah, we'll see. I'm going to knit it. I've enjoyed being a part of the knit along in general. So I am going to finish this project. I'm just worried that I'm not going to love it. And maybe I'll have to style it and like do some other stuff and we'll see, but we're going to have to see. I'm having like not buyer's remorse, but like color remorse. And I wish that I would have done something different. It's too pink. It reads too pink. And every time I look at it, it looks pink. So yeah, I think that like this kind of cool purple is maybe not my purple, but here I am. So That was a look into my existential crisis about this knit along. And yeah, so I will be casting that on here shortly, probably in the next week or so, and working on that. And I'm really, really excited about that. I don't have a ton of acquisitions. I have two, and neither one of them are yarn. I lost one of them. I didn't lose it. I just don't know where it is. Which my mom would say is the definition of something being lost. Hold, please. I found it. It fell into the seat cushion of the couch. Okay, so I have two quick acquisitions. I have been talking about wanting to like get back into crochet a little bit more, and so I bought myself a really pretty crochet hook. This is from Purl's Crochet. Tony Lipsy of TL Yarn Crafts always talks about Purl's crochet hooks, and they were having a sale, so I bought one. I just picked a size that I don't have already, so this is a 10mm crochet hook. And this is the, it doesn't say on the box, but I'll link this collection below. But I just thought it was so pretty. And I feel like it won't detract from the yarn, and it'll be easy to see in any color yarn. I don't have a project in mind. I don't know. I just picked a size I don't have. Yeah, I just picked a size I don't have. And I think it's the Streamline. I don't know. I don't know enough about Purl's. I just wanted to try it, and they were having a sale. So I bought one. Yeah. And then I have a really fun acquisition. Let me grab it. And hopefully. Okay, so you just got a sneak peek, if you were paying attention, to my test knit. So I have been talking for a while about wanting to buy a yarn bowl. And I think that one, they're just really aesthetically, well, we'll get into that. I think they're really pretty. And I think that they have like a very useful function. And I've been looking at different yarn bowls, and one of the issues that I was running up against is that I couldn't find one that looked sort of modern, that was like my vibe and my aesthetic. I initially wanted one that was like concrete or like concrete look. And I have not found one. And then I saw a bunch of like the wood ones, and those were pretty, but I didn't like love the way that those looked. And I don't know, they just looked very antique, and that's not something that I gravitate towards. And then a lot of the ceramic ones were like cats and bright colors and like all this stuff that I really wasn't super duper into. And then I stumbled across this shop on Etsy called, I think it's Peppo Ceramics. I think that's how you pronounce that. Oops, Peppo. You can't see that. I'll link it below. And she's a maker out of Canada, and she does the most beautiful ceramics, And I saw this yarn bowl, and I had to have it. Now, it was more expensive than other yarn bowls that I have been coming across, but it was so beautiful. And I read the reviews. All the reviews were great. The reviews all said the yarn bowl is bigger than I expected. And I was like, well, that's great. Like, we all want, you know, a big yarn bowl. And I ordered it. I had some gift cards that I had gotten for my birthday, so I ordered it, and it got lost in the mail. It went to like Bulgaria or something. I have no idea. It came to the United States. It went to like Chicago or Niagara Falls or something. And then it went to Bulgaria and just disappeared. I couldn't track it anymore. And so I messaged the seller, and I was like, hey, I have been tracking my package. It hasn't arrived yet. It says that it's in Bulgaria. Like, can you maybe contact like Canada Post and see if you can get a sense of where it is or whatever? And she was so sweet. We messaged back and forth. She was like, I messaged them. I don't know where it went. They're not really giving me a bunch of information. And then after about 2 weeks, she messaged me and said, hey, your package is moving. Hopefully it's moving closer to you. And I said, thanks, like I'll be on the lookout for it. And then like another week and a half went by and it just appeared out of nowhere. Like literally just like appeared. And it was so well wrapped. Nothing had happened to it. It was perfect. I was nervous that it had gone all these places and been tossed around, and I don't remember if the box was marked fragile or not, but like I was so worried about it. It came bubble wrapped with like packing peanuts and like a very secure box. Like the box was just big enough for the bubble wrap and the packing peanuts, so it wasn't like jostling around a lot. Anyway, I've been talking about the bowl. Let me show you. How stunning is this bowl? And it is huge. I'm gonna put a ball of yarn in it so you can see. So this is a skein of linen quill from Purl Soho. Brand new, unused skein. And look at how much room is in this yarn bowl. Like, it's beautiful. I have been using it to hold the yarn for my test knit, which again is out of La Bien Aimee Corey worsted in the Kitsune colorway. Stunning. And so I just like have this sitting on my side table. Words are so hard today. I'm so sorry. I have it sitting on my side table and I can like pull the yarn out and it's amazing. And then I also just have in here, like, I'm almost using it as like a notions bowl too. So I just like throwing some stitch markers in here. When I'm knitting, I will take my, what are these? End protector and throw those in there so I don't lose them, because I'm notorious for losing end protectors. I have like just all kinds of notions in there and they all fit. I've even like stored the second ball of yarn that I'm about to attach to, well, it's not the second, but an extra ball of yarn that I'm about to attach like in here. This yarn bowl is perfect. So I'm gonna link this below. The maker does not know that I'm like mentioning this or anything like that. I bought this with my own money, but I love this yarn bowl. It's so beautiful, it's so chic, and it doesn't look like a yarn bowl, which I love. It kind of just looks like a planter or like a vase, and it's so, so, so stunning and pretty. So that's all that I bought since the last time I filmed. Is that all that I bought? Yeah, that's all that I bought since the last time that I filmed. So that's all the knitting things, but I'm really excited for Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. If you live in the like DC, Maryland, Virginia area, or I think people come from all over, honestly, for Maryland Sheep and Wool, but I'm so excited for Maryland Sheep and Wool. It's the first time in a few years that I'm actually in town for Maryland Sheep and Wool. I've actually been out of town most of the time, and then obviously pandemic, and wasn't trying to go to that. And so I'm excited to get to go to Maryland Sheep and Wool. It's my first sheep and wool fiber festival. I've never been to Rhinebeck. I almost went last year, but it didn't work out. I've never been. I'm not an outdoorsy kind of girl. But I feel like it's not going to be as crowded as Rhinebeck. It's going to be obviously warmer, which we hope. Who knows what the weather is going to do. And it's smaller. And so I feel like I won't be like as overwhelmed by the vendors and the crowds and like all of those things going to Maryland Sheep and Wool. And it's close. I can just like drive up, go, and drive home. There are a couple of vendors that I'm really excited to see, and hopefully I can discover some new yarn. So on the next episode, I'm sure that I will have some yarn acquisitions and like yarny, stashy goodness from Maryland Sheep and Wool. I'm really excited about that, and hopefully finding some really pretty, like tactile. I call them tactile. I think the rest of the world calls them rustic, but I enjoy those kinds of yarn. I'm not anti-superwash. Obviously, I knit with superwash. I buy superwash. I have a ton of it in my stash, but I prefer the way that my garments feel and the way that they kind of hold up when they're knit out of more tactile, aka rustic, aka non-superwash yarns. So I'm really excited about Maryland Sheep and Wool. If you have been to Maryland Sheep and Wool, or you know of any vendors that I should look out for, let me know below. My vendor list is like pretty small, but I know that there's going to be like a ton of yarn vendors. I've been looking at the vendor list, and so I'm really excited to check out some of those places and hopefully get something. I don't have a pattern in mind, which is probably dangerous, but when has that ever stopped me before? So I'll just buy a sweater's quantity of yarn and go from there. So that's all of the knitting content. And I have said before in other episodes that I want to share a few more of my favorite things, just like throughout different episodes. And so I actually have 3 books to share today that have been favorites. A couple of these books, actually the first 2 books that I'm going to share are books that I have been reading for more of my professional edification. I work as a civil rights attorney. I specifically do racial justice work in the criminal system. So I have been reading these 2 books, and I will get into like the why of these books, but I've been reading these 2 books and really enjoying them, and I'm hoping that I can share them with you all and you all will find them as interesting as I find them, because I think they're amazing books. So the first book is called Push Out: The Criminalization of Black Girls in Schools. It's by Monique W. Morris. This is a really, really interesting book. If you have any interest in the education system and the criminal system and how people end up in the criminal system, and the role that the role that schools can play in criminalizing behavior. It's a really, really interesting book. A lot of conversations about the school to prison pipeline focus on Black boys. And this is a really interesting book about Black girls and how they are put into this sort of pipeline to end up being labeled as troubled or problematic or even criminal. And it talks about everything from hair to bodies to the way that girls dress, to the way that they talk. All of these things are covered in this book, and it's a really, really interesting, really, really I wouldn't say it's like a super deep dive into the issues. I have been enjoying reading this for work. I think that it has been a really interesting book to read, and it's so well written that it is a page turner, and you find yourself wanting to read more and more and learn more and more. And I have pages and pages of notes about things that I want to research and look more into, and so I have enjoyed this book. The next one, I like pretty much every Black woman attorney that I know has gone through a myriad of emotions about the the nomination, appointment, and confirmation of Associate Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. And it obviously started with like excitement, and then was like frustration, and then just joy. Like, I am so overwhelmingly overjoyed by the fact that there is a Black woman on the Supreme Court. As a Black woman, as an attorney, as a former public defender, I beam with pride and joy knowing that this woman is on the Supreme Court and that she is so overly qualified for the position. And it just, I don't know, it just brings to bear like all of the conversations that I had in college with my professors being like, you have to be 10 times more qualified. You have to put in the hard work. You have to do all these other things, and people will still doubt your ability to do the work. And I like watched that play out, and that was a source of frustration. But then watching her be confirmed and joy, I cried. Like it just touched me, and such. It was amazing. It was an amazing thing to be able to watch, and to be able to just be a part of, right? Like it was such an amazing part of history to be able to watch. And so I remembered that I had ordered this book in 2020. Another attorney friend of mine had shared that she was reading this book, and so I like immediately jumped and ordered this book, and I pulled it back out during the confirmation to read it, because during her one of her speeches, Justice Jackson talked about the shoulders of these other great Black women attorneys that she stands on to be able to be here, to be in this space. And her reverence and acknowledgement for these other women reminded me that I had this book, and it motivated me to actually open it up and start reading the book because I've had it for a while. The book is called Rebels in Law, Voices in History of Black Women Lawyers, and it's edited by J. Clay Smith Jr., who is, I believe he's still a professor at Howard Law School. I don't know. I don't know if he's still there, but he was at the time that he published this book. And it is an amazing book. Okay, so it's an anthology of articles, essays, speeches from Black women lawyers. And it's on everything from what it's like to be a woman in the law, to race and equity, to international affairs, the criminal system. It talks about the legal education system, about judges and elected officials. It talks about everything. And it's been such an interesting book to read. You can see I have it like tabbed and marked up for other article, like for the next set of the next batch. Why are words so hard today? For the next batch of sort of essays that I want to read. And most of them are like, 2 to 3 pages. They're not even that long. So you can read one and then kind of move on. But it's really, really interesting reading about the perspectives of other women who have come before me. Some who I know and admire and respect already. Some who I am just now meeting for the first time through their words in this book, and thinking about their perspectives and the roles that they've played, and the experiences that they've had, and allowing that to sort of shape how I continue to learn and grow professionally, but also personally. And so I wanted to share this because I think it's a really, really interesting book. Yeah. And then the last thing I have is a cookbook. So this is the Skinny Taste Meal Prep Cookbook. And I have used like Skinny Taste recipes before. I think it started off as like a blog or something like that. And so I've used those recipes before. And they're good. They're actually like really, really good recipes. There's a couple of like really good dupes for restaurant meals that I really like. But I have been trying to just order DoorDash less. 1, DoorDash is expensive. 2, my order is almost always wrong. I am a very picky eater. I order, I believe, very simple food. And yet, every time I order from DoorDash, my order is either not delivered or it's wrong. And then I have to like argue with DoorDash to get more food. I have to like dispute the charges. It becomes this whole thing. So I want to order DoorDash less. And so I have actually a big stash of cookbooks, and I was going through them, and I don't know when I ordered this. I don't remember ordering this, but I ordered it and I had it. And so I use this as sort of a kind of catalog of options of relatively healthy meals to make. Sometimes I just get stumped by what to make, and I think it's that the word just left me, but I think it's the fact that sometimes I don't know what I want to make that makes it easier for me to order out when I could just make food. I know how to cook. I actually enjoy cooking, and so this gives you options for like batch making meals and things like that. It's not super duper original. There's like batch pasta and sheet pan meals and things like that, like baked oatmeal. None of these things are original, but what I have found is that it gives me a starting off point, and it allows me to just kind of flip through and get inspiration and then kind of go from there in a way that I don't find as easy to do on like Pinterest or just like by Googling something. So I can literally before I go grocery shopping, just kind of flip through and be like, oh, that sounds delicious. I like that. I'll make that. I like being able to like look at the thing and be like, most of the things in here are things that I will eat to some extent, or can modify enough that I would actually eat it. But again, the recipes aren't super original. I think there's like a recipe in here for air popped popcorn. Which, here's a recipe for air popped popcorn. 2 tablespoons of popcorn kernels, preferably organic if you can get them. And put them in those like old school brown paper sacks that you get, like brown, like the lunch paper bags. You know what I'm talking about. Fold it over, pop it in your microwave for 2.5 minutes. You've got air popped popcorn. It is delicious. And you don't have to dirty up a dish. You literally just eat it right out of the popcorn, out of the bag. Air pop popcorn, free recipe. There you go. She knits, she cooks, she does legal things. She's a well-rounded kind of girl. Okay, but anyway, I don't think the recipes are super duper original, but if you're someone like me and you struggle sometimes with thinking about the meal to make, even if you don't follow the recipe in its entirety, but just like having a base starting point, then I think this is a really good cookbook. I'm gonna venture to say that I did not spend a whole lot of money on this cookbook. I'm gonna venture to say that. But if I did, it was at most 25 bucks. So anyway, recommending this cookbook as well. And that's it, y'all. That's all I've got. Anyway, I have babbled on. I think I talked longer about non-knitting things than about knitting things. So if you are still here, thank you so much for watching. As always, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend it with me. And I hope that you enjoyed the things that I shared. I will have every single thing that I mentioned linked below. All of the books, all of the yarn, all of the projects, all of the patterns, everything will be linked below in the description bar. If I miss anything, please let me know and I will make sure to add that link. As always, you can also find me on Instagram. I am at Phylena Knits on Instagram. That will be linked below. You can get sneak peeks of projects and things that I'm working on over there. And yeah, let me know if it is spring where you are, or if you are stuck in a perpetual winter as well, and what you are most looking forward to during the spring. That's all I've got. I will talk to y'all later. I'll talk to you later. So, bye.